We have Zana Goic Petricevic with us. She is the Amazon best-selling author. She wrote a book called Bold Reinvented, which is basically a book about leadership. There it is. It is a book about leadership. She's especially passionate about women in leadership. So I don't know who's going to be a better fit than her. She was part of our guest speakers last term, and she joined us again. So Zana, welcome. And the floor is yours. I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you very much, Julia. There was a controlling side of me already thinking, but I cannot unmute myself and I'm not able to speak. So thank you for that at the very end. So thank you once again, Julia, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I am really honored to be again here today. I don't know if any of you were with me last time, but I really enjoyed the interaction. I enjoy the energy. I enjoy the commitment. And therefore, it really is my honor to be able to be here today and bring some hopefully valuable content to you. Thank you so much. And I'm reading your welcoming comments aside at the same time. So I like to have my speakings interactive. So I do have a presentation and I do have a content to bring. And throughout that content, I will also be asking some questions just to have an engaging interaction. So by all means, feel free to come in, to ask your questions, to share your experience, and to make this whole speaking a far richer experience than I would be able to do that on my own. As Julia said, I am the author of Bold Reinvented, Next Level Leading with Courage, Consciousness and Conviction. And I think actually still for a couple of days, it's very, very reduced on Kindle. In case somebody wants to use that opportunity, then it will be good in the next following days. I will bring some content from my book here in today's presentation, so you may see whether you like it or not. And besides, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, I'm an executive coach, I'm a leadership development specialist, and I work with organizations and individuals. I like to say that I bring their support them to bring their leadership level to a much bolder level in terms of their individual leadership and in terms of their collective organizational leadership. There is a little kind of a tagline in my company which says, "Bold the leadership, better world." So today's presentation is about how to be authentic leader, and then how is it that that takes us to be servant leaders. So I am going to, can I share? Yes, I can, sorry. So I am going to share at the very beginning, just this presentation so that you can see what we're talking about today. So authentic and servant leadership. And just a little bit, about myself. So that's my story. Some of these pictures are from recent life. So me speaking on the stage, or here together with my 7-year-old as I was publishing my book. Some of these pictures are from my previous lifetime where I didn't know what real leadership is. And I wish I knew then what I know now about the real authentic and servant leadership. And some of these pictures where you can see me standing there alone are actually from my own development and my own reflection, which basically sends a message that to be authentic and servant leadership, we really need to take that time for being on our own and reflect around our own development and our own experiences to be able to bring the best to the world out of ourselves. So once again, this is my book, and you will find it in case you feel you can make use of it. What I like of some of the testimonials of this book is that people say they recommend this book to all leaders who seek meaning in the world, who are brave enough to start passionately creating bolder working environments and more daring societies. And I believe that that's exactly what authentic and servant leaders do. They tend to create more daring societies for themselves and for others. So my first question to you after this kind of a longer intro, are leaders actually born or made? What would you say?
Feel free to raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. So if you want to speak up, feel free to do that.
what would you say? Even if it's, you can put, okay, we've got, so you have to excuse me in pronouncing your names. Rosemont, did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. All right.
Beautiful.
So I actually believe that leaders are actually made. I wouldn't say there's no born leader, but you have people who, by virtue of conditioning, have some inherent characteristics. So they could have charisma, they could have poise. People could look at them and say, oh, I love the way you talk. I love the way, you demonstrate and you communicate. So maybe you seem to be a leader, but I feel that that's not all it is about leadership, because leadership goes beyond just being charismatic. So I strongly believe that leaders are actually made, but I think it's also a combination of both. But if I was going to rate it, I would say that it's a combination of both in terms of maybe an 80-10 or 90-10%, right? But I feel that leaders are more made than just born. There's nothing like just a born leader, right? You have to go through process. Your character has to be reformed. You have to have an understanding of your environment, and you must know how to perceive people properly so that you can lead them authentically. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosamond. So what I'm picking up from you is that even if there were some characteristics that we do get via birth, what most of our leadership is actually made, which means that there is some sort of work behind that, which is basically our personal development. So let's hear from a couple of you. So I don't know who was there first, so please forgive me if I mix up the order. I can see Mayra, Dr. Mayra Bola on my screen. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Super. Thank you for that. And I really appreciate the previous speaker's sentiments. I'm going to say much the same. I like the 10-90% correlation, so to speak. And just my own contribution, I think much of it has been said, but my own contribution is that I've realized, and I was literally thinking about this today without realizing that this was going to be a question on our forum, is intrinsically are people born with the ability? And I just feel like some people being brought up in the exact same environment, but they're so different. So I just feel that there's potentially a genetic element, but absolutely, we can train people into becoming super leaders. So training, I think, would take up the 90%. Absolutely. So I'm in agreement. Thank you.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. We can train people. That also means we can train ourselves, right? To become leaders. And it's probably the most of the responsibility is on ourselves to train ourselves as leaders. Let's hear from one more and then we're going to move on. So Grace, I can see you next to my screen. Oh, Grace disappeared for me. So if it's no Grace, then it's Hawa.
One sec. Hawa. Yes, I think now you can unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. You have to press you have to unmute yourself. Can you do it?
Okay, thank you.
Maybe
good evening.
Maybe Janet can come in.
Maybe Janet can come in. Yeah, she's the next one on my screen.
I did.
Oh yeah, Hawa's here.
Am I clear now?
Yes, Hawa, go ahead.
Yes, I did.
Oh, we are having some technical problems there. Okay, so Hawa, we're gonna let go of you just for a moment and you can come in then maybe on the next question. Janet, if you can unmute yourself, let's still hear from you and then we're gonna move on.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Leaders are made, and this is because of the one's does to be able to become a leader or to achieve the goal that they would want to achieve, which is worthwhile in the society or in an organization. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So what I'm kind of hearing is that we pretty much all agree that if not 100%, but at least 90% leaders are made. And here is something that I'd love to offer to you right now. We are all leaders. As born, as such, we are all leaders. It's actually up to our choice to train ourselves to really bring that leadership to life. And when I say that, our circumstances are different. A lot of things around us are different. A lot of things within us are different. And our paths to leadership are not the same. And at the same time, we can all be made as leaders, but it requires our own training, our own personal development to reach that point. So as our next slide, there are just a couple of quotes that can support the ideas that I've just brought up for you. Leaders aren't born, they're made, and they're made just like anything else through hard work. Or maybe the other perspective, you don't need to change yourself. You need to come home to yourself, and that changes everything. So basically, many times in our personal development, we go through very vulnerable journeys of, as the quote says here, coming home to ourselves, coming home to our authenticity. But it is throughout our lives that we get conditioned by many things that unfortunately takes us away from our authentic leadership. And sometimes when we ask ourselves, who am I as an authentic leader? It's not an easy thing to give an answer to that question, right? Because there can be a myriads of answers, myriads of perspectives there. Who am I as an authentic leader? Which means that our self-development journey is something that is much needed for us to find the answer to that question. But finding the answer to that question is a process of making us leaders, rather than just being born as such. So if we are made as leaders, then we can also imagine that there are some things that get in the way, right? So what is it that gets in the way? Actually, the answer is very simple in that sense. We sometimes very often get in our own way. That's the greatest obstacles that gets in the way of our own leadership. So if any of you get across Bob Anderson and Bill Adams and their books, Scaling Leadership or Mastering Leadership, you will see and learn that they speak a lot about the outer game and the inner game of leadership. And if you just look at this slide here and at this kind of iceberg, you will see that this outer game, which is basically the domain of training, kind of takes smaller portion of our leadership. It is about our competencies, our knowledge, our skills, our technical expertise, our experience, and stuff like that. But there is the much bigger part, which is the domain of development, which is what we call the inner game of leadership, which basically refers to our internal operating system, the way we make meaning of the world. And then based on that, the way we make decisions, how much we are self-aware, what's our emotional intelligence, what is our inner belief system and our assumptions, and who do we believe to be? So what is this image of our self-identity that we hold for ourselves? So that domain defines our leadership to a great extent. And that domain can also get in the way of our authentic leadership. And that's why it's not by chance that this domain is called the domain of development. So if you ask me to, in this sense, to describe the difference between training and development, I would almost say that in training, we as facilitators can download content at you and you kind of receive that content in terms of new knowledge. But in the domain of development, we invite you to step into that vulnerable place where at the end you actually receive wisdom rather than just accumulated information. And that's what's very much needed on our journey to leadership development. And I love also what they're saying here, what you hold in your consciousness tends to manifest. In other words, your inner game, everything that's happening in your inner world runs your outer game. So runs all of the behaviors and all of the showing up on the outside. In my book, I actually have this quote that the path to this higher level of consciousness actually goes through the painful depths of your comfort zones. So it's very unlikely that we will develop as leaders to a higher consciousness unless we have stepped into some very painful spaces in our comfort zones. What are some of the opinions about this? How is this landing when I share this content? Janet, I can see your hand again, and there's Grace this time again. So maybe we can hear from both of you, one at a time. Grace, there you go.
Hello, everyone. So I think the fact that you stated about development and training, because that makes the whole difference, because training becomes more like in our systems. For example, I'm from Kenya. We have always had the system where what determines whether you qualify for something. And so you find that there are many people who have things on paper and performance on paper, but are not really developed from the inside to instill values to other people. And so they have the papers and they have good grades and they have passed and all that, but they don't qualify to lead a person, or they don't have the capability to impact people. And so once they go to the spaces, for example, in offices or in whatever sphere, from the small spaces of just being employed, and you have a small group of people that you're leading, to other senior offices, you find that there's a disconnect in how everything is being implemented, because either they're not able to relate with people, or they're not able to make decisions as a leader should. And most of the time you find there's a system that more so looks like a dictatorship kind of a system in most of the employment sectors, rather than people who are in a place where they impact the people who are below them. So I think for me, the development part being the most important thing, rather than training, is what has really caught me.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you, Grace. I'm going to just pick up on a couple of things that you're saying. They're very, very important. I've noticed that you mentioned several times the impact. So leaders are actually seen through their impact, right? And when we bring our authentic leadership, that is when we have that impact. And also a couple of things, Grace, that you mentioned there. Leaders know how to relate to their people to achieve results. So if we speak about the authentic leadership today, we know that it can no longer be a transactional leadership. It needs to be a balance between relational leadership and the achieving leadership. So focusing on just one end in leadership, meaning the achieving results without focusing on how we relate to people, is not something that brings authentic leadership, and not something that creates impact. Okay, so there will be more opportunities to comment on this. So if we move on, I would say that one of the things that sets us on the right direction is simply being aware that there's always something to learn out there for all of us. One thing that I again mention in my book, and I say there is something most bold in our choice to accept the practice of learning as a way of living and leading in all circumstances. Now, what does that mean? When we speak about learning in the area of development, that actually means that we are constantly confronting ourselves at this level to be able to access the next level selves, to be able to access that a more developed, authentic leadership. Because it would be easy if we would say, well, that's just one stop to that authentic leadership. But we know it's not, because leadership development is an ongoing process and it never stops. So there's always the next level, because there's always bolder level of us. There's always wiser level of us. And to think that we've reached the ultimate level means we are rejecting our capability and necessity to learn. And that's the first thing that doesn't make us leaders. So in order to be leaders, and especially authentic leaders, leaders that can be in service of the world, we need to be open to learn over and over again. And there isn't anything that we cannot learn from, including ourselves, or maybe to say especially ourselves, as a source of new learning. If you feel that any of this is resonating with you, here is also one link that we can pop in the chat later on, or maybe even immediately, and you can download this Jumpstart Your Bold Leadership book, which is for free on my website, and you can find some of these statements there. So I'm going to put in the chat, and I'm going to ask Julia at the very end, or maybe you can even copy it from this shared presentation. So if we move on, we're going to come to something else that is called dilemma, especially when we speak about the authentic leadership. So as we said before, what gets in the way many times is ourselves, right? But why? What's there that sort of prevents us from stepping into our authentic leadership? I've come to realize, and I've learned from many people who were my teachers, is that it's always about the dilemma between what we're afraid of and what we really love. And you can call it the dilemma between safety and purpose, or you can call it the dilemma between safety and passion. But the essence of all those dilemmas are sort of two feelings, fear and love. If we act from a place of fear, maybe we can be control and command managers. But if we act from a place of love, we can be authentic leaders. And the same is linked to risks. We cannot risk much acting from a place of fear because our primary intention is to keep us safe. And we're probably spending a lot of time in our head whose task is to keep us safe and not take any risks. But if we're acting from the place of love, then we're acting from that place that knows the change that needs to be created, knows the truth that needs to be brought, knows the voice that needs to be put out there. And that's when our authentic leadership flourishes. I was today in a different conversation. This just reminded me of that. And I've come to a conclusion to think with all the leaders that I speak out there, and mostly in the corporate world, it seems to me that there are so many warriors of brilliant minds, and we need warriors of brave hearts to make the change in the world that we would like to see. But these warriors would need to risk some of the comfort to be able to create the change that we would all love to see, or at least that we all say we would love to see. So what are your thoughts here on this conversation? Let's see someone who we haven't heard before.
I think we have an interesting question in the chat as well. So Sue is asking, how do you balance without people taking advantage?
That's a very good question. So we cannot control people taking advantage, right? What we can control is, or maybe the control is not the best word, what we can know and be aware of are our values. So when I'm acting from the place of my values, when I'm honoring my values, it matters less whether people are taking advantage than what I'm trying to create. Because when we act from a place of love, will we lose some of the comfort? Probably yes. Will we have some of the scenarios that we would like to avoid? Probably yes, as always. But that's not the point. The point is what matters so much that we're ready to risk for it. So I don't know whether this answers your question, but it's always the matter of, does it keep me more safe or does it make me more alive? So it's not a dilemma that goes like either or, that we can kind of solve. Yeah, it's love, then it's no fear. No, it's the dilemma that we need to kind of hold as a paradox. Yes, it makes me feel afraid, and it matters so much that I need to go through the fire and sit in the middle of the fire if it's necessary. And that can, now we can think that this sounds like, oh, we are in this space when we think about doing some great things. No, the pattern is the same, even when we do some sort of little things in our life. The pattern is always the same. Is it the choice that makes me feel safe or that makes me feel alive? And so many times we are compromising choices that makes us feel alive for those that makes us feel safe. And it's normal, it's human, it's our basic need. And at the same time, that's where our growth is visible. Are we able to stay with the discomfort for the sake of our vision? That's probably the question we all need to ask ourselves many times a day. Yeah, I love, Selena is mentioning here, to remain true to yourself, to your vision, to your values. And also, Rosamond, the prioritization of value system. Absolutely, absolutely. And probably, not probably, but for sure, at many stages of our lives, we change these priorities or what matters most at each level of our life. But we always know what our values are, and we always know when we are stepping on our values. Your values are key in leadership. Absolutely. Absolutely. We actually lead through our values. We lead through our values. Okay. So leadership is a risk. I know when I read this sort of definition that it resonated with me very much. It kind of made sense. I was always wondering why this can feel so uncomfortable. And then when somebody said, yeah, because leadership is a risk, it's a normal thing. There's no leadership without risk. But leadership is a risk that we choose to take in order to create what matters most. This here, this picture here, what you see, it's part of the leadership circle profile, which is one of the tools to measure our leadership effectiveness. And we're talking about authentic leadership today. And the leadership dimension here, called authenticity, contains two things. It consists of two things. One of them is integrity, and another one is courage. And integrity are basically your values. Integrity is how much you walk the talk, how much everything that you do, that you talk about, that you demonstrate is in line with your values. And another part of your authenticity is courage. There's no authentic leadership without courage. So the question, oops, I'm trying to move this. Oh, a little tech issue here. So how do we access that courage and that integrity? These are the 4 questions from my book that I sort of say every leader needs to sit with, probably many times throughout certain periods. I wouldn't say many times throughout the day, but many times in our lifetime, we need to come back to these questions. The first question is, what am I here for? Right? So many people will say, well, what's my purpose? But why am I here? What's my work? Why am I here? And then also, where am I going? What's the vision? Do I have it? And what's leadership without vision? Who can I lead? Can I lead even myself if I don't know where I'm going? And then as I'm going there, who am I being along the way? Because leadership is very much about who we're being, not just about what we're doing. So, you know, the modern world is trying to tell us that leadership is all about what we're doing. But in order to shape that doing, we need to be first. So who am I being along the way? How do I relate, as Grace said before? How do they relate to the people that I lead? And then finally, how am I acting along my path? Am I acting the way that is in line with my vision? Am I taking on a daily basis decisions that are taking me to my vision, or on a daily basis, I'm taking decisions that keep me safe? And my vision is going to remain somewhere there hanging in the air, and I may not reach it during this lifetime. So these are not easy questions to sit with. And at the same time, it's necessary for every leader to sit with these questions. So I can see some of your comments that purpose is the key. Absolutely, because it's our North Star, it's our guidance. And at the same time, purpose is not something that we kind of grab. Now we've defined it, it's clear, we've got it, and that's it. Even purpose can take different shapes as we move along, right? But we need to be aware of our values and what matters to us, because that will inform us around what's our leadership work while we're here. And then the purpose will unfold from that place. So let me hear some of your comments to this. Oh, I love this. Purpose evolves as we grow along. Our values are the anchor of our soul. Oh, is it busy?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Wow, this is beautiful. Can you share your view on all this?
Thank you so much. And everything you've been saying and all the other people have been saying has been resonating all day, because I believe strongly that leadership is a matter of the soul. And when you ask the question, are leaders born or made? I say everybody is born, but leaders are made by development. And just like you said, there's the internal and the external, the internal and the intrinsic values.
Yeah.
We assign meanings to things. What do you assign a meaning to? What does it mean to you? It's about our belief systems, because our belief drives our behavior, of course. It's all about what we know on the inside. So I always say, live life from the inside out. It's not just about leadership. It's about your entire life. Who are you? Just like you said, what are you here for? And who are you? It's about being a human being, not a human doing.
Doing, yeah.
And I say leadership has 4 L's. When you love the people, when you listen to the people, you learn from them, and then you can lead them. Beautiful. So leadership is a you and you deal on a soul level. Like you said, the values are your foundation. They're the anchor of your soul. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you, Bissy. I'll remember these 4 L's. So you love, you listen, you learn from them, and then you can lead them, right? And just notice how so many times in our world, it's first leading them. We'll call leading them, in fact, managing them. And we kind of drop the love, the listen, and the learn, right? Well said, Bissy. Do you want to add something, Bissy? I can see again your hand up there. Are you okay? Okay, good. Okay, beautiful. So if we move along, I'm going to come to that territory that you just mentioned here, Bissy. So soul work gives meaning to that risk of leadership, right? So our leadership work that makes us feel alive and serves the larger context of our world is risky. If there is something that we deeply care about and we want to make that change, we want to bring it up because it will be serving our world, we will definitely feel some sort of a risk related to that. It is so normal. But that soul work in our development helps us find the meaning to this risk. It doesn't take the discomfort away. It doesn't take the fear away. That's not the equation. That's not the design. But what it does, it gives meaning to that risk. So suddenly stepping into that fear becomes meaningful because you have to do it, because it comes from your soul. So many times in my book, I mentioned this distinction between head and soul. I'm not trying to say that we don't need our brilliant heads. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of that. What I'm trying to say is that too often this head takes us through the filters of don't do that, don't go there. It's not clever, right? It's a huge risk. And our soul that we cannot touch, we cannot define to the details, just gives us this inner, deep, divine knowing of go there, do that, because it's your work. So in my book, the soul framework actually stands for self, other, universe, and legacy. And it also stands, so it's a kind of a word game, soul, because if you see the first letters of these 4 words will give you soul. But it basically, this model depicts the entire leadership journey. We always start from self. We always confront ourselves and our current identity level. And the second thing, when we have confronted ourselves, we open up the question of how we're relating to others. Because everything that we want to do in this world, all the leadership work that is worth doing in this world requires a community. We cannot do it alone. It requires somebody else to be there with us, to do things that are bigger than you and me. And after that, there is a universe, because we all live in a system and we can all notice what's needed in our corners of the world. We can notice the change that's needed. And it's up to our, not just authentic leadership here, but really our servant leadership to pick up on those signals in our community. So what needs to change, and to act and to be the change agents there. And that's how we leave the legacy at the end. That is the legacy of our leadership. So as you could notice, even through my soul framework, there is an identity shift that happens. So self and other is a playground for our authentic leadership, and universe and legacy is a playground for our servant warriorship, right? So we are first authentic visionary leaders, focusing on our personal value-based vision. And then we become servant warriors who create a vision-based contribution for our world. Because it's inevitable to ask ourselves one question in this journey. Okay, so now this is me. I've got to know myself. I've started my development journey. Now, what's my work in the world out there? How do I bring that to a wider community? How do I serve with my leadership? If we never ask ourselves that question, I would challenge how much of an authentic leaders we are. Because our leadership is sort of made in us, but it's not just for us. If it doesn't come out of us to make the change and give service out there in the world, then what's the point? Okay, so the question, how are you shaping your world? Because we all do, right? We all do. We all shape our world by what we do or what we don't do, even more. And here is something in my book that, I don't know if that happens with other authors, but I had my favorite parts of my own book, parts which I really loved writing. And this universe part was my favorite one, where I speak about leadership not being a matter of power, but a matter of concern. So if it concerns me, it invites me to do something about it. And that's when I bring my leadership. To wait to have the position of power would mean to equal leadership with a formal authority. And sometimes, luckily, these two things collide, the formal authority and personal leadership, and sometimes they don't. And we all know that from our own corners of the world, that it happens that way, from every organization, from whatever place on earth. That's just the way it happens. So what does that teach us? Hopefully it teaches us that we don't have to wait to have a formal authority to bring our leadership out there, right? And so many times we will say, there's nothing I can do. Oh, there's nothing I can change. Because sometimes we think, oh, we have to change the entire world, and then it feels very overwhelming, right? But this, what I call the illusion of powerlessness, is just something that keeps us in our safe zones, because it's far more reasonable not to try and do anything, not thinking that we can actually change something. So I speak about the 3 inner stories that go completely against the servant leadership. The first one, it doesn't really concern me, because it's happening somewhere there. I don't know, it's not close to me, so it doesn't really concern me. And then the second story goes, because we feel a little bit guilty about it. Well, even if I said something, my voice doesn't really matter. I wouldn't be able to make a change, right? And then the third level, well, why would I take risks? And that's how we get stuck on that level, which is not authentic, because it eats us from within and it's not serving our world. So authentic and servant leadership find their own ways how to confront these inner stories to be able to bring change to their environment. The 2 promises of a servant leader out there is that if we are acting as servant leaders, we are always awake and fully present with what our communities need, what our part of the world needs. And we are being of service courageously creating that. So what can I do? What's that little change that I can make? I might not be able to change the entire world, but I may be able to change one aspect of my world. And that's what puts us in a position of servant leaders. That's what puts us in a position to give our contribution. So the first kind of sentence there in this chapter of my book is, whatever we choose to show interest for, whatever we choose to speak up for or stay silent about, stands for our contribution to the world. It stands for our leadership. And the way we bring our leadership to our world is actually shaping the contribution we are creating. So our leadership is our contribution. What is your contribution to any of your environment today? Be it your family, your community, your workplace, whatever, even your learning community here. What it is that's your contribution. And the same question goes to me, to you, to everyone out there, if we really want to step into the conscious leadership. Any thoughts on this before we move on? No? Are we okay?
Wow, no comments. Are we awake? Yes, maybe it's time for the pool question. Okay, yes, there you go.
Yeah.
I thought something's wrong with people being quiet. There we have the hands up. Good, good, good.
Okay, let's hear from someone. And I've actually caught just one from Nadia, just one remark. Servant leaders sound a bit negative. I'd like to hear more about that. What was it that sounded negative?
Who is this?
I think Nadia. Is it Nadia Narabit?
Oh, Nadia. Okay, yes.
So Nadia, if you wish to speak to that, you're very welcome.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Maybe it's thanks a lot. It's very informative and very interesting. I'm just wondering, it's more of a, let's say, how should I say, the word we're using, because I find often for women, we always, have this connotation of being kind of servants to whatever out of, history and stuff. And my question is, it's just a word, I know, but it sounds maybe I'm a French speaker at first. So in French, it sounds very negative when you use a servant as a word. So I don't know if in English it's the same, to be honest, but for me, it's still, and because now it's a women in leadership course, I was just wondering, because often I was talking to a woman leader that I interviewed actually on Saturday, and she was telling me, there's no real woman in leadership per se. We're all, as you said, we're all leaders, men and women, but often for women, it's contextualized, and often it's all related to serving others or doing something. So just a word. I
love what you're saying, Nadia, and I assume I know where you're coming from, so I'm going to speak to that, and if it doesn't work, just push back if I got off a wrong track there.
I'm sure you will.
Sometimes it feels with this service almost there is an underlying weakness there, right? That we kind of have to go, have to sort of lower ourselves to be there serving other people. And I have a feeling that at a certain point, it was the idea to take away leadership from service, to make it rather a power over exercise, to make it a control and command exercise, right? While leadership is completely different. So leadership is neither having power over and neither giving power away. Leadership is first and foremost power within. And that means feeling and owning your own authentic leadership. Only from that position, we're able to be in service of another human being. And that means, first and foremost, be in an honest, open, and equal partnership. Rather than giving our power away or putting our power over. So when we speak about this servant leadership as almost with a certain negative connotations, I feel that's because we are conditioned to think a little bit like, I need to be there in charge, right? While leadership is in fact a partnership in that sense. And I'm going to link it also to something else. There are 6 paradoxes of leadership, one of the theories out there. And I love one paradox that says leaders are humble heroes. And that basically say that if I'm a leader and I have a vision and I'm going to include people to come here, there is the vision, let's go after that vision. And then what if I make a mistake? What if that direction was wrong? Am I going to be humble enough in service of my people and that vision and myself? Am I going to be humble enough to say, hey, I made a mistake. It's a wrong direction. So the real question is how much we are in service of people when we're just showing a strong side of us, authoritative side of us, control and command side of us, and how much we are able to lean into our strength within. And that necessarily sometimes means we show our vulnerability, we show our partnership, and we're able to sit at the table with anyone. Does it make sense, Nadia, what I'm saying?
Fantastic. No, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Okay. And thank you so much for pointing us to that, because that's one of the things that can have some negative connotations, and we can be having question marks. What does it really mean there to be in service of someone? Does it actually mean to give your power away and serve someone in that sense? No, it actually means to bring your power within to someone else who also brings their power within, so that you can connect on a partner-to-partner level. It takes a lot of development. It takes a lot of development of the entire community, right? So many people ask, yeah, but what happens when I'm developed and people around me are not developed? What happens is that you can be a role model. You can be a change agent. You can influence your community to get on the journey, right? Okay, so I'm noticing your hands, and let's just see just a couple of slides more, because I'm also conscious of the time. So one of the things that I say it's very important as a skill of authentic and servant leaders is the practice of questioning. And I think, Nadia, actually you role model this beautifully just with a question before. Let me question this thing around servant leadership. So when we question things and we don't take them for granted, we can come to brilliant solutions together. But to be able to question things, we need to be able we need to be willing to learn, or as Bissi said before, to love, listen, learn, and then lead. We can't do that if we're not questioning everything, including ourselves, because then we will start from the position, well, what I bring is great and I'm always right. And that couldn't be further away from the truth, because that would mean I don't need to change in any aspect. And that's not true for any of us. Everything is changing constantly, including us. And the more we're questioning, the more we are curious, the more creative we can get to find out new possibilities, new truths that can serve us better at any given moment. So please take these questions with you. What are you questioning in your world right now? What is your underlying concern? And how does that shape your contribution? Okay, so before we move on, I can see some hands, like Eileen has had her hand for a while now. Eileen, do you want to share with us some of your comments or questions?
Yes, I would. I'm loving this presentation. It resonates with me on so many levels. So first of all, thank you for making the time to do this
thank you for
presentation for us. So for me, I'd just like to say when you say our voice is our contribution to leadership, I've just realized that I've really shied away sometimes from speaking my mind because of fear of pushback, actually, like you said. Yeah. So for me, it really resonates that I have been keeping all this inside and actually suppressing the leadership inside me, instead of just speaking my mind. And even if there's pushback there, that's okay. We're always scared of what if they'll push me away, I'll lose my job, I'll lose da 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 da. And I really like that you said voice it anyway. I mean, if you can find other ways to overcome it, you can become a role model. So I think I just wanted to say thank you for that. I really appreciate that, what you said about that.
Thank you so much, Eileen. I'm loving what I'm hearing from you. This is what I've heard, that when we suppress our voice, we are suppressing our leadership.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Right. And here is the thing, and I speak about it in this other land, in the soul model. We are constantly voting, right? Our brains are wired in such a way that we judge in the first 3 seconds. I like this, I don't like this. I like what she says, I don't like what she's saying. I like what she brings. That's normal. And when we learn to be leaders, when we develop as leaders, we learn to see wisdom in others, rather than voting whether we like them or not. And that also needs to start from us. If something that I have to say matters to me, because otherwise it steps on my values, there will be people, Eileen, who will like what you say. There will be people who will hate what you say. And believe me, there will be people who won't even notice that you spoke up.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to what it means to you, to your values, and to your integrity. If it wasn't like that, none of us would ever step on a stage, any kind of stage out there. And we're on a stage on a daily basis. So the stage is not actually the stage. The stage is our life, because we always share some sort of opinion. The moment we share opinion, we're on a stage. People are looking at us and thinking, is that clever or not? Is that useful or not? And if we were at the mercy of the opinion of others, we would never be showing up out there. That means we need to start from our own values. And here comes the paradox. We start from our own values and we take responsibility of the impact that we're creating out there. But that means we need to be aware of our values, aware of our value-based vision, and know if we're taking the risk of speaking up, why we're doing it. What's important about doing it, and what's the impact that I wish to create.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you for bringing that. So here is another quote from my book. The change that makes the world more human is always worth the risk. So many times we're thinking, maybe not the time for the risk now. Maybe, leave the authentic and the servant leadership in the closet. I need my basic human needs. I need to feel safe. And it does feel safe and non-fulfilling at the same time. So as human beings, the way we are designed, we need meaning. And we get meaning through growth. We get meaning through following our purpose, our passion. We get meaning through doing what makes us feel alive. And that's often risky. And as much as it's risky, it's needed, because that's the way we make the change in this world to make it be more human. So whatever you're thinking out there of doing, whatever sort of kind of nagging you a little bit, I don't like this, or I want more of this, or this doesn't exist, I wish it was created out there. Ask yourself, what could I do to help it make happen? How could I bring my authentic and my servant leadership, my brave voice, my courageous act to get things moving? And the moment you do that, I bet that you're going to find yourself surrounded by people who will join you in those attempts. Okay, I am aware of the time, and also looking at some of your chats, and I can still see some of your hands. So does anybody wants to?
That's Zana, that's just the
That's a poll that pop up. There was something about chocolate. Yes. I can see. Yes. So
sorry about that. That was just attendance.
No worries, no worries. Does anyone want to say something at the end or comment, or still feel they've got a question that needs to be answered? Yeah, thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much. Let me know if you get my book and if you read it and if you like it or if you don't like it, whatever your opinion is about it, please reach out. I love to have a conversation. It's going to make us both wiser if we engage in that conversation. Okay, let's hear from some people we haven't heard before. Marisa? Is it Marisa or Marisa?
Yes, my name is Marisa Useru from Nairobi, Kenya. I just wanted to just give you a big up to the presentation, and it just shows the kind of person you are. I think maybe what I would want to know more, maybe just a snippet of the process you went through from the time you mentioned you took up to develop yourself into the type of woman that you are now. Yeah, great job, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marisa. And actually, you can read about it in my book. So my book is not completely my personal story, but the very foreword, the intro, is my personal story, because I was part of the corporate world and I had a certain experience that completely changed my life. And that's how my development journey started. So if you read it, you will see my personal story at the very beginning, and I hope it can answer some of your questions there. And then also later on, you will see some of the stories of my clients that I work with today, and that I can see myself in them, and and I can learn about myself in them, because as you know, once we start the personal development, we're sort of mirroring each other in all of our human pains and gains, I'd say. Okay.
Thank you so much. I know that you have other commitments, so I want to take this moment and say that I was part of the same lecture, the same topic last term, and it still got me thinking. I was all over the place in my head with what I want to do, what my purpose is in leadership. So congratulations, you did it twice in a row with the same topic. Guys, thank you for such an interactive class. I'm always proud of you when you raise your hands and are very active. And we will have some news in regards to Zana's work and her leadership classes. So keep in tune, or how do you say that on social media? I should probably be looking more into that. But yeah, you will just follow the announcements, the professor's announcements, and there might be something interesting for you that's coming from Zana's expertise.
Thank you so much. Really honored to have been here, and wishing you all the best, and hope we connect on another occasion. Thank you so much. Thank you, Julia.
Perfect. Zana, thank you. We'll see you in 1 week. Have a good one, everyone, and stay safe.
Goodbye.
Bye.